South Carolina. We good to go? All right, so we left and made our way down to South Carolina. I think we left on I want to say we left on a Tuesday, and we're gonna plan on making the drive in 2 days, Tuesday and Wednesday, and be there by Thursday because I had made an appointment with a realtor to look at houses, 3 or 4 houses I'd found online, because we needed to find a place to live as quick as possible. And we didn't want to rent. We wanted to buy a house again. You know, we wanted to take, otherwise, what, capital gains tax or something, you know, if you don't put it right back into another piece of property. So we didn't want to rent and look for a house. We wanted to find a house as soon as possible. So when we got here, this is funny, we got here finally on Thursday, and do you know where we went? Bear in mind, we've got 2 dogs, 2 cats.
To the beach?
No. We went to the KOA campgrounds and got one of those little cabins for $10 or $15 a night or whatever it was, so that we could keep all the animals. And we didn't know how long. We had to turn the truck in when we got here. So we had to find a storage unit and take everything out of the truck and turn the truck in. So I met with the realtor. We got in too late Thursday to meet with the realtor because we had to deal with the truck and moving everything out of it and into a storage unit and paying people to empty the truck out because we didn't have friends here and Steph couldn't do the whole truck. I mean, it's an entire household, you know, that we'd accumulated over 5 years.
Yeah.
So put everything in storage, turned the truck in, and on Friday we went house hunting. Found a house within 3 hours that would work, that we liked, that was in our price range, that was in a nice neighborhood, and that was not being lived in because the couple was going through a divorce. Made an offer on it with the contingency that they allow us to live in it and pay rent into a certain account until closing. They signed it Friday night. And on Monday we moved into the house. The only problem with that was we had to go back to the storage unit and hire another moving company that was local to pack all our stuff up and bring it to the new house and unload it again. But it was really weird that it all worked out in 3 days. And we had a place to stay and a roof over our heads again, and you know, we started putting life together. And then we found out that the house we were trying to buy had gone into default, the loan, because the husband, since they were getting divorced, had taken out a second on the home without his wife's knowledge. And then he stopped paying on it. So they were foreclosing on the second. They were still in, it was a nasty divorce. Once the house got put into foreclosure, we couldn't stay there anymore. Our contract was void. And they gave us 60 days to move out. I think it was less than that. I think they gave us 30 days. They told us, I was like, isn't there, and we went to the bank, isn't there any way we can work out a deal to buy this piece of property? And they said, no, because it's in foreclosure, it has to go through all these red tape, rules, procedures. And what you can do is you can be part of, when it comes time, you can, and that'll be in 3 months or so, you can put in a silent bid, you know, when it comes up on auction, and if your bid wins, you can have the house back. And I went, no. So I started looking for another house. And every day on my way home from work, I'd start driving through the neighborhoods looking at for sale signs. And whenever I'd get, lunch break, I'd get online and search the local real estate area and look at houses and pick which ones I'd want to go see. And I had a camcorder with me, and I'd go and I'd, shoot the house, and I'd come back and say, "What do you think, Stephanie?" We finally found a house that was half a mile from where we were that was even better. A little bit less money, but it had a bigger backyard. And the backyard because it was, how subdivisions have a big outer circle and then they've got the inner circles. This house sat on the outer circle, and behind it was farm, woods, pine, and no more neighborhood. It was literally the edge of town. There was nothing past there. So we bought it. Been there ever since. Now I worked at the library there from '89 through 2000. And then I had a sit down with the director because Stephanie and I still trying to work through our problems with the relationship. Marriage as a romantic idea is one thing. Marriage as reality is a totally different animal. And there were several times, we were on the brink of just calling it quits, divorce, whatever, but we kept hanging in there. And what was kind of ironic was once we were residents of South Carolina, we were subject to their divorce laws. And the divorce law in South Carolina says that if it's not spousal abuse or adultery or one of two or three different things, in order to get a no-fault divorce, the two of you have to live separately for 12 months. Who has the money to support two households? I think it's the most stupidest, unfair law that should be taken off the books because it's prejudice against those of lower incomes. Oh, Stephanie had a job on day one when we got here too. She had an interview the first day we got here. And she got hired the same day and started the next Monday while I was dealing with moving into the new house. It was so crazy how fast everything happened. So I worked with, and I really enjoyed the public library. It was a really nice break from the private library where public libraries were just nuts. There's people in them all the time. They're crazy. And especially once we started offering computer services to the public. And that's where the person who vacated my position before I was offered it, that's where she had left the library. She had just gotten them automated and had just installed 20 or 30 public computer terminals. And that's when I walked in and took over everything she had built and had to figure it all out and how she did it and learn that system. But even while I was doing all that, I still was required to put in 4 hours of my 8 hours a day as a reference librarian out on the floor, manning the reference desk, answering questions again. Who's Ben Franklin? How do I find this author? And once again, all the library stuff, played in. But at the same time, I had this whole network I was having fun with. And again, they wanted a website presence. It was the new thing. A portal to the community. So I built them a website, put it up online about 2 weeks before I left the position. And got a call like a week or so later from the director saying, "We just won South Carolina's best public library website of the year. And thank you very much." I said, "Do I get the trophy?" He said, "No." They had this neat crystal, award from the state library that the South Carolina State Library presented. But anyway, I left them, better off than I started the position. But I had that ceiling again of the library position. I had, excuse me, broke a nail. I had acquired so much skill in the library science, the automation end of it, that I was marketable at least $10,000 higher than what I was being paid. But it was a county library system that worked on a merit system, so pay was going to go up very slowly, and the range of the job when I first applied was, the top end was $39,000. And I had to sit down with the director after a couple of years, and I said, when do I get to that $39,000? He said, probably in 15 or 16 years. And I said, I can't do that. I said, so I will contribute and do my job just like I promised I would, but I'm letting you know that I'm going to start job hunting because I need something with a higher salary. And then I, applied at a few places, and nothing was really panning out, but I kept working at the library, and I don't know if I told you earlier, but I had applied to this private defense contracting company that I found an ad to. They were looking for an IT manager, and I applied for the position and was interviewed by the president of the company at the time and two other people. And I remember the president of the company, really nice gentleman, asked me, he said, what makes you think you can go from a library, doing, the background you've done, into this type of work? And my analogy was, I've been playing in the minors for 8 years now. I said, I want to play in the majors. And he said, okay. But then I got a call saying, thank you for applying. Your skill set isn't quite up to what we need for an IT manager. And I forgot about it. Life went on. I kept working at the library. I kept looking for jobs. I'd do an interview once in a while. And then a year after that, almost to the day, I was in my office at the library and my phone rang, and I picked it up, and, is this Terry Crupe? I said, while I answered, this is Terry Crupe, Dorchester County Library. Mr. Crupe, this is Donna Cook from AAI. You interviewed with us 12 months back. I said, yes, ma'am. I said, and she said, I'm calling to see if you're interested in the systems administrator position. It's not the IT manager position, but it's one of our, top system administrator spots. And the president of the company was so impressed with you, he asked me to call you directly and offer you the job. And I said, am I supposed to come in? I was confused. I said, because nobody had ever done that to me before. Am I supposed to come in and re-interview her? And they said, no, this is a job offer. And I said, well, what's the pay? And they said, it's low. It's not because we don't know how you're going to be as a systems administrator, so you'll be on a 6-month probation. She goes, but we'll start you at $47,000. And I went, not out loud, but I was like, oh my God. But I very calmly went, may I have the weekend to think about it? Because it was a Friday and it was like 2 o'clock in the afternoon. Oh, sure, no problem. But can you call us back by Monday? We need a decision soon. Or otherwise we're going to open the position up and start looking. Because they didn't interview anybody for the position when it came open. The president remembered me and said, I want this guy. Call him up and offer him the job. So I got off the phone and I called Stephanie at work. And by this time, Stephanie had stopped working for Pet Dairy, where she was the assistant to the regional manager for Pet Dairy on the Eastern Seaboard. She had quit that job because she had gone back to school for massage therapy and became a licensed massage therapist and had started working in a spa, making good money and decent tips. But this was something she really loved. She has very healing hands. Wonderful, you know. But this was something that she had a passion about doing. It wasn't just a paperwork job, you know, shuffling. You know, it was a hands-on job. Called her at work and asked her, I said, you remember that company I interviewed, you know, and went through the whole thing? And then they just called and offered me a job. First thing out of her mouth. As soon as I said they called, well, how much is it? And I told her they're going to start me at $47,000 for the first 6 months, and then there'll be a bump in salary. What did you tell them? I said, I told them I'd think about it. She goes, how long are you going to think about it? I said, I guess you want me to take the job, or you're up for it. And she said, well, hell yes. So I put in my 2 weeks notice because they wanted me right away, and then I went to work for AAI Corporation, AAI Services Corporation.
And where are they?
They're based out of Somerville.
So great.
So my 5 mile an hour, or my 5 mile drive to the library became a 6 mile drive to the new place, going a different direction.
Fantastic.
So I worked there for 3 years until they started getting so big they had to find a new building. And they ended up buying the old Corning glass building that had gone out of business. And we moved the entire company. And the IT department was very heavily involved in moving the entire company, because the entire company was the computers. Every single person that worked there, except for the assemblers out on the high bay area where they assembled. What the company did was they made maintenance trainers for the C-17 aircraft cargos that the Air Force uses. Mm-hmm. We made maintenance trainers that the government would buy, put in an Air Force base that had C-17s, and then use that device, which was a scaled model of the plane, in whatever section it was, and they would use it to train their mechanics. So that's why they were called maintenance trainers. And we built scale models of these planes, which are just enormous if you've ever seen one. I mean, they are so big that when they're on the ground and landed, there's an 8-foot difference in the tips of their wings from when they're airborne and when they're on the ground stopped. That wingspan is that wide. Monster planes. But they're the cargo, they're the backbone of the Air Force for moving things. You know, it was the C-130 at first, the C-130 cargo plane, and then the C-17 came along, the Globemaster, C-17 Globemaster. Lockheed Martin, I think, Boeing. Anyway.
I think a couple of those flew over my house a couple of weeks ago. They were flying below radar, and honestly, they looked like if they'd landed that they would have been bigger than my house.
They are enormous planes. They are very enormous.
Couldn't believe it.
Yeah. So I managed to, you know, learn more and more as I went, as you would with any job, until the point where, once again, driving to and from work, once they moved, it became a 12-hour one-way, or a 12-mile one-way. So my distance was starting to go back up again. And you have to remember that anytime I go anywhere, I've already gotten dressed and transferred into my wheelchair. I've already gone out to my van and transferred from my chair into the driver's seat. And then I've driven to wherever I've gotten to, and then I have to transfer again back into my wheelchair and go in the building and work all day, and then when I leave I have to go reverse all that. So it's a lot of work to go and do anything. And it just started taking its toll, and working with computers for as many years as I did and doing my little typing, I developed carpal tunnel in both wrists, tendinitis with what ligaments and tendons were still usable, and then peripheral nerve damage and what muscles remained. So strength started deteriorating, stamina started deteriorating. It got harder and harder to drive. And my doctor one day wrote a note at my request saying, Terry is not to drive on an everyday basis anymore. So I worked it out with the company where I could work from home and forwarded my desk phone to a work cell phone and kept the headset on all day and was connected from my home computer to their computer as if I was sitting at my desk at work. And whenever, people would call IT and call my line, they didn't know I wasn't in the building. I assigned rights and did whatever they needed doing and closed their help desk ticket, me and the help desk. And I did a lot of stuff there, as you would with any job. But after about 4 months of working at home, it just really wasn't working out. Even that was getting to be too much. Sitting at the computer for 8 hours a day and being expected to stay there 8 hours a day and working, even though all I was doing was going from the bedroom down the hall to my office. It just got to be too much. So I walked in one day and with another doctor's note and said my doctors said that it's time to hang up the towel and rest, because I was worn. I was so worn. My health was deteriorating, and because I was still in that mode of I've got to prove that I deserve to be here, and that's my mindset of how I worked, I was stressing myself out. That wasn't helping my health. Health just kept going downhill that year. I was on short-term disability for 6 months, and during that time saw endless neurologists and pulmonologists and cardiologists and the people that did the nerve tests, and all trying to figure out if there was anything they could do. And when it finally came all said and done, the neurologist that I was seeing was saying, I don't know what else tests to run. I don't know what else to look for. And I asked her, I said, what I want you to do is tell me that this can be expected. This is this is a natural cycle. And she finally said, that's what's happening. She goes, this is a natural cycle of decline, and it will just keep deteriorating until you lose everything you've gained, and you'll be right back to where you were the first week you got paralyzed, because your strength will go. You won't be able to do transfers anymore. You'll be stuck in a bed. You won't be able to drive. So short-term turned into long-term disability, and I've been retired for 2 years now. And to keep from going insane, I garden in the summer and work on my website and computer and try to stay in touch with old friends by email and stuff.
You still cook?
Not as much, because it's harder and harder to lift pots, but yeah, I still like to grill, but I usually have to time everything so that Stephanie gets home to plate it all up and serve it all up, because all I can do is get it in the pots and get it cooked. But her and I, we still have our troubles, but we're still together, and we still support each other, even though who's to say? I'm talked out.
Yeah, you've done an incredible job.
I just, when you talk about courage and you talk about someone special and you talk about inspiration, to me those are words that are and should describe people. And whenever I would get really down and I felt that his struggle was so hard, and I would think to myself, I just don't know how to help him anymore. I don't know how to do this, or I don't know how to do that. And inevitably, within hours, or the day, he would call. Hi, Mom, how are you? Da da da, you know. And there was always that voice that was saying, I'm okay. I can go on. I'm going to go on. And I would get off the phone. I would never say anything to Terry, but I would get off the phone and I'd think, how can you not want to push on to when someone is inspiring you to reach further, go further? You know, when they told me in Oklahoma, you know, he may not ever lift his head off the pillow. And then after the next stabilizing surgery, it was, well, we'll get him to sit up in a wheelchair. And every time he succeeded at something else, proving them wrong, that not to listen to anything but what's inside of you, and the encouragement and the love that you're being surrounded with and hugged with every day, whether it be physical or not. And to think to yourself, I'm going to go on, I'm going to succeed, I'm going to go to school, I will drive, I will do this, I will do that, I will do this and I will do that. And accomplish it, succeed. To me, that is courage, but it's also, and should be, inspirational to all of us who are able-bodied and take for granted everything we do on a daily basis. Yeah, you're not going to think about it every day and say, but when you are surrounded by negative thoughts and negative actions, how do you dismiss that and get that well up inside of you to say, I'm not going to listen to the negative. Terry and I were talking about it, and I said my very favorite line in a movie is from Pretty Woman, of all movies, because they were there and they were talking, and he reached over and he said, we think you have great things in store. And she just lowered her eyes and she said, it's easier to believe the bad. And I think that so many people have things done for them and taken care of and this, when they don't know their own strengths and their abilities to carry on. To me, that is so inspirational, because when you love someone, you do want to do for them. You do want to reach out and go, here, I'll do that. I'll do this. I'll do that, because it's easier. But the struggle that they have to go through to accomplish it, and then you can set that plate, or you can set this down, and you see the smile of, I got it. I've got it. I can handle it. How can that not be inspirational all the time on a daily basis? I've had that inspiration in front of me, talking to me on the phone for the last 29 years. You know, I've always been proud of Terry. Always. You know, a mom loves her children 24/7, every second of every minute of every hour of every day. Not to say you don't like some of the actions that happen, but you love them. So that kind of pride is a natural thing. But when a child can inspire, I think that that's just the best there is. So that's the way I feel about inspiration.